Dick, how you doing?
Fine, Ray. How are you this morning?
Good. Good to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you.
I see you've been looking at your assessment results there.
Yes, Ray. I found them very interesting.
Good. Well, you know, I sent it to you last night with the idea that you'd have some opportunity to look it over, but I didn't want you to dwell on it because a lot of times people can misunderstand some of the data. So I wanted you to come in this morning at least being familiar with the data, but that you didn't have to go over it in great detail because that's what you and I will do today. So let me start by asking any quick first reactions to what you saw in the profile.
Well, first of all, I did appreciate you sending them to me in advance because it was helpful to have an opportunity to review them.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, the reactions were mixed. It did not surprise me that you found that I was high in ambition.
Mm-hmm.
You also identified the fact that I was tested high on intellectual curiosity, which didn't surprise me either.
Yep.
And it also looks like I came up high on excitability,
Mm-hmm.
which again, I think I can relate to in terms of my emotions.
Uh-huh.
It did surprise me that you found me not high on interpersonal sensitivity.
Well, remember, it wasn't that I found you that, it was the instruments telling.
That's true.
But we do need to talk about that, sure.
And my reaction to that was heightened by the fact that I did show up with a high score on sociability.
Uh-huh.
So it just seemed to me that those two kind of didn't
Conflicted with one another.
fit
Right.
together. So that was one thing I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, well, you know, the reaction that you're having to this, I think, is a pretty common one. That, like, and me too, because I've taken these instruments too. And when you take them, some of the things that you see in the report, I think you can automatically resonate to. You know that about yourself, and it fits, and
Right.
it's somewhat comforting, I guess, to realize that the instrument is picking up some things that you know about yourself already. It's nice to get that kind of confirmation, isn't it?
It's reinforcing.
Right. But the point that I make for anyone going through one of these assessments is that all of us have blind spots, and one of the great values of going through something like this is that it can serve to show you where your blind spots may be. If these instruments only confirmed for you what you already knew about yourself, they would be of limited value, right?
That's
I mean,
true.
I guess there's some value in getting confirmation.
There'd be nothing gained.
Well, that's right. But, you know, the other thing I would say is, you know, there's no assessment instrument we have that's absolutely perfect. So we don't want to look at it like it's a blood pressure reading or something. We need to talk about these kinds of things and make some sense out of it. I think what it does do, though, is it gives us some ability to at least have a hypothesis maybe about what's going on. So, so you were surprised at the sociability score being high and the interpersonal sensitivity score being rather low.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how can you be one and not the other?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point, because you would kind of think they would go hand in hand, but in fact, they're not precisely the same thing as one another. Sociability, in this sense anyway, means how energized you are by people, how much you need to interact with them. Typically it would be predictive of somebody who enjoys working on group projects with other people. You're not the kind of person that's going to be terribly satisfied sitting in a back office somewhere doing calculations and that sort of thing. So, you know, particularly people who are in leadership positions where they have to interact with lots of other people, we normally look for a fairly high sociability score.
Well, I do enjoy being with other people, and I tend to draw strength from them.
Mm-hmm.
So that
All right, so that
did
fits.
not surprise me at all.
And you know, we've talked a lot, you know, in our last session where we looked at your personal history, the intellectual curiosity, I think, is not a big surprise either. I mean, it's not it's not accidental that you went ahead and got a doctorate degree and all the rest of it. But I think what's throwing you a little bit is that lower score on the interpersonal sensitivity, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Well, interpersonal sensitivity is a little bit different than the sociability thing. Interpersonal sensitivity is a measure, as the name sort of implies, about how attuned you are to other people, how accurate you are at picking up their feelings and things like that. So it's possible, and in fact you see this all the time, that you can be interacting with people and be energized by people, but maybe not reading them as well, and maybe not picking up what their reaction is to you. In fact, I've heard it described to me, not with regard to you, but with other people, as he's hearing, but he's not really listening. Meaning there's a lot of interaction going.
Or maybe put a different way, I'm not quite sure or grasping where they're coming from.
That's right.
Okay.
And you know, I was trying to think when I looked at the data too, how does it fit or not fit with things that you and I've already gone over? So I think when the last time when we were together and we looked over the 360 assessment findings, overall people really like working with you. I think they see you as a very dynamic leader. But what we did see in some of the comments were that they feel like you can be a bit on the, I think one person used the term domineering side, that you can take over. I mean, there's no doubt that you're a strong leader, but you can sometimes have too much of a good thing.
Can overdo it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's, you know, that's true of almost anything, that you can have too much of a good thing. It's certainly not a good thing to have a meeting that's not structured and where the leader of the meeting is not, you know, providing some agenda or direction for the meeting. That can be a problem too. But the reverse can also be a problem. And we did see some indications from the 360 that people weren't feeling they were really a team, that they came in and kind of each individual gave their report to you, and maybe there was some comments from the group, but there wasn't a lot of group interaction going on.
Okay.
And again, we're in the hypothesis area here, but I guess what occurred to me would be maybe that strong leadership that you provide has sometimes the negative consequence of not really leveraging the full intellectual horsepower of your team.
I think what you're telling me and what I should glean from this is temper my behavior and my reactions to make sure that I'm hearing and getting the most from my organization.
Yes. So let's think about, you know, rather than have an abstract discussion about it, if this is the hypothesis that we're working on here, then the question becomes, well, what do we do about it? And what do you think we might be able to do? Well, knowing that or supposing that, how could you change your behavior in how you run your next team meeting?
I think when we bring an issue into the meeting, it would help me to purposely hold back initially until I have given my employees an opportunity to voice where they are on that issue.
I think that's an excellent idea. In fact, that's what occurred to me too, that maybe, you know, they may be a little bit surprised when you don't take over right away, but you might be the last person to speak, really. There might be some awkward silences that would occur during the meeting, but I think the temptation for you will be, don't jump in and fill the space, because your people will be looking to you probably about, well, okay, what's his opinion on things? And the danger of that is that as soon as you offer your opinion, everybody will line up behind that opinion, and you won't get a real discussion going.
I could be shutting down good ideas that never get surfaced.
Yeah. Now, you know, one comment I would make about that too is, don't be surprised if your team, at least initially, isn't comfortable with that. Because, you know, people get into a rut where in some respects it's nice to have a boss that you walk in, he gives you the marching orders, and you just do it in a robotic kind of way. There's not a lot of thinking that gets involved. But if you start being more of what I would call a facilitative team leader, you're throwing the challenge onto them, and frankly, it's more work for them. But it's a good way to get more varied ideas. It's also a good way to develop people. The better people that you have on your team are more likely to step up to the plate and be challenged by that, and that's how they'll develop.
And I think we leverage all of the resources in the meeting.
That's right.
By giving them an opportunity to participate or join in.
That's exactly right.
And as you said, that may come as a surprise and may take us all a while to get used to it, but I think in the end result will be much stronger.
Yeah. You know, if it's any consolation, first of all, we need to test this out and see how the next meeting that you have goes. But I can tell you that if it does pan out the way we're thinking, it's a very common issue that you see, particularly in jobs that are more intellectually challenging, because it's not accidental that you're in the job that you're in. I mean, you've got a long track record of being a very smart guy who's made some very good, smart decisions along the way, right? So why wouldn't you keep doing what's made you successful up to this point?
That's very easy to do, but I think this will be an interesting experiment, because I think it will be interesting to get the reaction of my employees if they sense that I'm changing my behavior and trying to be better. I think, or hopefully, it will encourage them to open their thinking to trying new and different things.
Yeah, I mean, one side benefit of it, I think, will be that you'll get a much better read about the talent that you have in your group. Because some people, if they're challenged that way, will really step up and come up with some interesting new ideas and insights. Other people will kind of sit back and, you know, maybe they don't have a lot to contribute.
One will feed off the ideas of the other.
Yeah, exactly. But you'll have a better sense of where the talent lies in your group. And, you know, I think I said this to you last time. At this stage of your career, more and more you are going to be judged more on the quality of the team that you develop. Right? I mean, I think I think it's safe to say at this stage of your career, people know you're a smart guy and they know that you've accomplished a lot. So your credentials are very clean in that area. The area that you and I are talking about, though, is are you able to leverage that into a group where the group isn't just an extension of your intellect, but it sort of has its own merit on its own that way. It's a tough thing to do with a team, but if you can get them that way, you're really golden.
Well, we won't know until we try.
Yeah.
And I think it is an interesting concept of reaching out and trying to draw from those who may not have been participating in the past.
Right.
And I think the organization will only be stronger as a result.
Good.